won't do it. He won't do it out of nothing. In Northern Ireland, it took 38 years for the apology to be forthcoming. There was an inquiry, and the apology was a product of it, and it was part of a peace settlement. That was the key point. This wasn't out of the heart of the Prime Minister. It was partly out of his conscience on behalf of the state, but it was also part of a settlement. We need it in Cyprus as well, don't we? And we can draw lessons from Northern Ireland. The gentleman made a very telling point about the settlers, that Turkey's unwilling, as I understand it, Turkey's unwilling or has been unwilling to establish a committee in the talks to focus on the settlers, and the government of the Republic has essentially caved in on that point and has pushed this notion of 50,000, which is unlawful in my view. But yes. Okay, and it's been advanced by the Republic of Cyprus that this committee should not be established. In other words, the Republic seems to have caved in and has accepted that the settlers is a non-issue. Well, I go back to the rule of law and the Geneva Conventions. Why were those Geneva Conventions introduced? It's because Nazi Germany developed the doctrine of Lebensraum, living space. We need the German people to expand across Europe. We need to feed the German Reich. We need to feed the German people. So we need to go into the Ukraine and into the Balkans and into France and into the Sudetenland and into Austria and settle these territories with Germans in order to ensure that the German state is strengthened in power, it's entrenched across Europe, and that it's able to dominate Europe and the wider world. Now, Hitler was able to achieve that temporarily by assassinating and committing genocide against the Jews, killing the Poles in their thousands, killing the Russians in their thousands, and trying to encourage this policy of Lebensraum, which is why the Geneva Conventions criminalised it. And what Turkey has done in relation to the occupied north is engage in the practice of Lebensraum. And if you read the book by Dr. Davutoglu, the Turkish Foreign Minister, Strategic Depth, he develops this theme of living space in relation to Cyprus, as I understand the translations that have emerged. I don't read Turkish. So what Turkey is engaging in relation to the settlers is not only a violation of the Geneva Conventions, but it's also engaging in exactly the sort of practice that Hitler engaged in during the 1930s and 40s in Europe. And that's why I go back to Lord Philip's point. The rule of law is never negotiable.
Yeah, I just wanted to make another point. I mean, my lecture I spoke about the role of the law of lawyers. I didn't talk about politics. I tended to criticise politicians. But I did say that I could understand the difficulties they face. But the one thing I can't understand is one thing we don't seem to talk about, which is that, and it came up at the end of a talk I gave in Cyprus on the rule of law and all these issues. Somebody asked the question, we must have a settlement, Costas. We must have a settlement, Costas. We must have a settlement. And I got the impression it was at any cost. And that made me think, well, that's really our problem here. Why are we now talking about property after 2 years? Property is one of the most important issues for us. Why is it the last minute? Why are we pushed to talk about property at the end? That's a huge mistake to me. Maybe someone explained the rationale for that. But it seems to me the problem is we come across as a desperate party. Okay, we're the desperate ones. We must have a solution because otherwise they're going to be partition and that'll be it. Well, I'm afraid that may be it. We are going to fight that it's not it. But we're not going to accept a solution. You tell me if you disagree with me at any cost. And we're not. And that's why I disagreed in 2004 with Anaplan. Lobby disagreed. Because that solution that was put forward was worse than partition, in my view. We're giving the Turks rights over us. And that's what I want to throw out here. That seems to be the question that's never really discussed. We're leaving our politicians free rein to get a solution. We must have a solution. We must compromise. We must have a settlement at any cost. That's the impression I get.
Thank you. I will take 2 questions from this. I take questions from you. No. Let me start some others.
My question has been covered, so I don't want to
Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
As a former Qustion, I fully sympathise and share the sentiments, the traumas that Gyagos experienced in Ios Ambrosios in 1974. After I became a refugee, I was trying to find out the reasons why I became a refugee. I looked at a number of issues, studied, listened, and at the end of the day, I came back to one point, which is a crucial point, I think. And I go back to the 1960s, and you touched on the issue of the Treaty of Guarantee. And in that Treaty of Guarantee, you have three legitimate governments who guarantee the integrity, the territorial integrity, the sovereignty, and the security of the island to preserve fundamental rights, not to allow economic or political union or partition. And what the events subsequently show, leading up to 1974, every single one of those governments, and to a degree, us as well, to be frank, violated their obligations under the treaty. Now, we wouldn't be sitting here today if they complied with those obligations. But the fact of the matter is, they did break the law, they did break the ethics of the law, they broke fundamental rights, they allowed criminality to take place, and at the end of the day, we're all sitting here wondering. Now, my question is, which is the legal question to Kostas, bearing in mind that today the status quo is one of the guarantors enjoys two sovereign bases in the south of the island, and the other guarantor, which is an aggressor and the protagonist to the whole thing, enjoys 36% of our land and has military bases in the north. We, the injured party and the refugees, are sandwiched in between. So my question is, you cannot take governments to the International Court of Justice. You can only take individuals. But is there any legal argument to be brought against these violators like the United Kingdom, and you mentioned, and Turkey? Turkey, we know the answer, but the United Kingdom practically is unthinkable because the consequences will be detrimental to us, I believe. But I'm just curious to know whether there is any legality to it.
But as far as I'm aware, this question has arisen before, and the answer is you can, but no one has done it, no one feels that it will get anywhere. If you take the United Kingdom to the International Court, will it force the United Kingdom to do anything different? You know, I think practically, I can see your point, but I've raised it before, and it's just been poo-pooed by people in Cyprus, in the government, and in, you know, I think there have been other avenues that we've adopted and we've pursued. For example, Cyprus has taken Turkey, as Glaucus went through all the cases. We could have done something similar against the United Kingdom, but for political reasons we didn't do that. That's the only answer I can give you, I'm afraid. It's not a good answer, but I think.
Can we just, did you want to say something on this?
Yes, this evening's Evening Standard carries the headline, SAS closing in on Afghan assassin. This is a theoretical question. How did the SAS troops go to Afghanistan? My point, though, the broader point is that I'm not an advocate of I'm not an anti-Brit in relation to the SBAs. What I am in favour of is a cannier approach by the government of the Republic of Cyprus in relation to the United Kingdom and the sovereign base areas. There is a scope for leverage there. But as I said in a conference at London Metropolitan University a couple of weeks ago, there is a taboo in the Republic of Cyprus about the sovereign base areas. They're reluctant to discuss it in public, and yet I think it's something that ought to be discussed publicly, because the UK and the Republic of Cyprus are natural allies, in my view. The British don't realise it, but there is a natural alliance there, and if Turkey is going to emerge as an Islamist superpower in the region, British interests may come into conflict with Turkish interests, and the Republic of Cyprus, in my view, would be the natural British ally in the region. Remember my words, and I think they're going to turn out to be true. It may take 5 or 10 years. But yes, we shouldn't have, I'm not in favour of this knee-jerk anti-British, let's kick the British out approach, but we need to be canny, and we need to use, I'm speaking here wearing my hat as a Greek Cypriot. We, you should be citizens of the, I'm not a citizen of the Republic. When I say we, citizens of the Republic, which I'm not one, should use the sovereign base areas for the purpose of obtaining leverage over the United Kingdom and trying to extract a better deal, not just for the Republic of Cyprus, but for the United Kingdom as well. The British don't realise that their policy towards Turkey is contrary to British interests. That's a lecture for another day.